Thank you, and welcome to this panel discussion, which is about upcoming challenges for HR leaders while taking cost-cutting measures. And if we see last 6 months, almost 6 months have been really tough for all of us. But I mean, you have been at the interface of that that tough line, I would say. First of all, I want to understand. My first question is to Mr. Ashissh Kapoor, Associate Director HR EY. Tell me about 6 months from an HR perspective. We have seen the employee perspective. We have heard about employees going through the stress. What has been the HR side of the story?
Hi, Ruhail, and hi, everyone. Thanks for putting up the question to me. I think you're absolutely right in asking this because it's a completely different story. When you talk from an employee's perspective and from an HR perspective. Of course, it's critical for the HR to take a very strategic view, as the decisions that are made now will determine how well the organizations can sustain performance during this crisis and also emerge in a position of strength. The HR leaders are focusing all of their current efforts in making optimum and effective use of technology, and as well as reprioritizing and downsizing HR services and processes. From an HR angle, it's never easy. Too fast a decision, and you can actually be thought of somebody who is too quick to take decision, and too slow, you can actually put the business or a particular function under. So I would say that it's not been easy, but a large number of downsizing in terms of HR services, people, processes, has made it a bit tough. But it's a learning. It's the first time we've all been through something like this. I think it's an amazing learning and a great value add that we can provide to the business at the same time. Go ahead.
Right. Ms. Burman, I want to come to you with the same question, that how have you dealt with this tremendous stress that is around, both for the employees as well as for the, HR side? How have you dealt with this stress?
I think the focus should be really about what's important, right? Because it's important to channelize what you want to address, right? Because stress is caused because of various reasons. And what you need to do at this point in time to be able to really prioritize and say, what do I need to address at this point, right? So if I look at it from an employee standpoint, it's focused more about looking at employee productivity, one aspect of it, and I also focused on a lot about well-being, right? So, and that's where we are actually focusing on emotional and mental well-being of our people, which is focused around saying, how can you really capitalize on the social safety of it or the psychological safety of it? So that's one way of dealing with it from an employee standpoint. From an organization standpoint, this is where I think the customer centricity becomes extremely important. So when you actually talk about from a customer centricity standpoint, what is it that the customers aren't really going through? Because it has an impact on the way you really come across as a service organization. And being able to really build that resilience, build that empathy in the minds of our business leaders, be it the sales organization, the delivery organization, or the support organization, is what we are really focusing on. Right? How do you necessarily walk with the customers? How do you necessarily understand their minds, their problems, and be able to work through it? It's really a journey because you don't really have a stopgap solution. But how do you necessarily walk through that becomes extremely important at this point in time.
Right. Mr. Pawar, there used to be a time where everybody would say, I want to join HR because that is like the most balanced, job. It has a defined timing and all. But 6 months have shown that this is one of the most toughest jobs and a lot of resilience needed. Tell me your side of story over the last 6 months.
So I think just taking off from what Ashish said as well as what Suchismita said, I think the last 6 months have truly been like crunching a decade of experience together. And some of us have been privileged to experience the bust of 2000 and 2008. But this one clearly was different because in 2000 and 2008, you at least you could see things coming, right? It happened overnight. And I think using exactly the words, Ruhail, that you talked about, I think the word was really that comes to my mind is resilience. I think organizations had to ensure that they were resilient to be able to face the wrath that was coming out of economic uncertainty. And the other one, which was equally important for organizations to stay relevant and successful going forward, it was about having mental resilience for the workforce. I think that's been the tightrope walk that HR has primarily been involved in the last 6 months. I think we've been working harder, all of us. I'm saying this on behalf of everybody, to just stay at the same place, right? Unless, of course, you were potentially in healthcare services, or you were in one of those businesses, or potentially working for a media company or an OTT platform, which had huge uptake right now. So you could sleep and money is still being made. That's a very easy place to be sometimes, right? But for us who had to have people on the streets out there, I think it was the most challenging times for an HR professional. And whoever said that HR job is cushy and easy is completely a myth that people have.
Now, definitely nobody is going to say that, of course. Mr. Mohanti, your category has been a little different. Stress has been around, of course, but there has been a certain growth. Would you share the same sentiments what other panelists have shared, or was your experience completely different?
Hi, good morning to everyone. I think whatever Ashissh, Suchismita, Unmesh has said are all pertinent, because we have gone through a different change of whether it is a paradigm shift or the mindset, whatever. Yes, for many of the industries like healthcare or the pharmaceutical or any e-commerce industry, so it is a different the experience altogether. So if you look at the cost cutting point of view, whether it is freezing the hiring point of view, yes, we have not done that. But at the same time, we had a lot of challenges as far as the delivery is concerned, as far as the customer satisfaction is concerned. During the lockdown 1 and 2, it was extremely difficult for all of us while doing any kind of a delivery, because of the non-availability of transportation and so on and so forth. But at the same time, we have shifted from work from office to work from home, which is a extremely difficult task because a lot of Indian industries, they're not used to. When you think about 6 months back, so we never thought that work from home is a solution for any of the organization. Now we have adopted it. So I think for us, there is no major changes, but at the same time, every industry has a impact, and so do we. We have also undergone a lot of impact from the delivery or the logistic point of view. Otherwise, the hiring, yes, we stopped for a couple of weeks rather during for lockdown 1 and lockdown 2. However, now we have prioritized, instead of going full blown on the hiring piece, we are now prioritize what to hire, what not to hire. But business is as is, so there is no change in the business scenario. Rather, we have gained a lot of things. We have learned a lot of things while doing the business. From offline, now we are more focusing on the online kind of business.
Right. Great. Mr. Singh, you have heard everyone. Sorry, yes. So I want to come to you with your thoughts. What has your story been like?
So, it always helps when you're speaking last, because you can pretty much get a lot of thoughts from a lot of people. But first of all, thank you very much for having me. And, it's great to share the screen with my very good friend, Unmesh. The way I look at it, and, the school that we come from, and I'm sure most of us on the screen are from a similar school, is that, I don't think in my entire career of about 24, 25 years, I ever saw an HR professional who wanted to come here because it's going to be easy. The world, the industry, the world has moved to a place where, knowledge is going to be the key differentiator, and people are going to be the drivers of knowledge. So that's one side of it. Also, I heard somebody said that we are downsizing HR processes in the last 6 months. I think, the way I would define our experience is that, we reinvented our HR processes. We did not, our delivery from an engagement standpoint became very, very different. Our onboarding processes were challenged. I'm lucky to be working for a company which is continuing to hire the way we were hiring always. So I have not seen an impact. So we had to really re-engineer and re-engineer our entire recruiting process. Technology is a big play. I work in a company. My team has about 75 bots, robots that work on my team. So I was a little lucky because I was ahead of the game a little bit. So technology played a big role in terms of getting me to deliver what I wanted to. But from a business dependency standpoint, I always said this, and Unmesh would pretty much agree, because we come from the same school, is that, the HR role is the role, the chief HR officer is the chief people officer of the company, the chief ethics officer of the company, the chief communications officer of the company. He's the face of the organization. He's the chief advisor to the CEO of the company, and multiple other roles. So I think, all these got challenged because we had to excessively communicate with our associates. We had to advise the business. They were, because people were working from home, compliance, ethics issues were starting to come up. We were the face because we were going and telling the world about what we were doing, etc. So all of that actually became really seen in the last 6 months. That's been our experience, and that's the way I look at it. But I want to leave one thought for, and I don't know what the rest of the people think, we talked about cost. One of the key things that, about 70% of Indian technology or IT or BPO company, that's where most of us are from, is actually constituted by wage cost. It will be vary between 60 to 75%, depending on how you play and what's the structure of the organization. The role that we can do from an influencing standpoint of cost is not just by playing pink slips. We have to look at a lot of other things that we can do to pretty much manage it in a lot better manner. I wanted to leave that thought as I move it back to you, Ruhail.
Perfect.
And I would agree. And one more thought that I wanted to also place it with all of you, because, and especially you talked about saying how's HR coping with it, right?
Right.
I think this is the time where possibly emotional intelligence, right, of HR professionals is at the forefront, because it's because you don't really have a solution for everything, right? You have to constantly experiment, and that means you can fail in certain experiments. But your ability to be able to bounce back, learn from that, and keep the employees, keep the customers, keep your business stakeholders in front, and be constantly willing to reinvent yourself is possibly the biggest competency shift. And we have always talked about adaptability in HR. But this is what is actually being put in the front. And the people who are able to constantly do that will be the ones who will really succeed.
Right. Mr. Kapoor, I want to come to you that as we are looking towards resuming work, office spaces being again occupied, there is a different sentiment altogether once that happens. One is that it is a certain kind of trauma that you are dealing with also. There is a certain kind of insecurity involved as well. How are HR leaders preparing for that kind of a comeback from an emotional standpoint, from making employees more secure, safe, dealing with the trauma? Is it going to be easy?
I think I'll pick up the key from where Dr. Singh sort of mentioned that I haven't seen anybody who's also come into this particular array just trying to experiment and thinking that this job is going to be easy. So I would never say that it is going to be easy. And whenever, and we were talking about the cost saving measures, they carry an inherent risk always. HR leaders are essentially determining always the near and the long term impacts that it's going to have on employer brand, on employee engagement. And when it comes to real estate, a couple of other things which we are thinking of maybe reevaluating, reassessing on how things will pan out. It's not easy. When it comes to employees, of course, you would have people on a vast scale, Ruhail. Somebody is really happy. I can talk about myself. I've had a little one last year. So, for me, probably this is the best paternity leave sort of an option that I could ever imagine. But at the same time, there are people who are struggling, be it with how do you manage time, how do you manage space at home, and the initial few months really saw people being really up. They were really happy. They were kicked in. The online versions and the e-learnings, everything was going fine, and people were kicked about it. I think over the last few months now, even that sort of energy and enthusiasm is now started to decline, only because they've also started to realize the the difficult part of working from home. And we've never been in a Western sort of a culture, where you have a set office and a separate space where nobody is going to come during the day, where you won't see the kids running around, the bills ringing, and all that will happen. So I think from an employee standpoint, we've fortunately, unfortunately, we've been in business where employees throughout the lockdown have been going to clients. They've been traveling. So to manage the sentiments, to manage the feelers, I think like Suchismita said, it just can't be one particular barometer to measure everyone. People have very different views. Somebody's happy, somebody's not, and you have to actually be very specific to individual needs. And it's difficult, I think, given the organization as large as ours, about 22,000 people plus. It's difficult to specifically comply to everyone's need, that are you comfortable and not, and then take a decision. Maybe have those rosters coming in where people who are comfortable, who can manage things, are doing it from home, and somebody who cannot has the flexibility to come to office, but at the same time making sure that the offices are as secure as they can be. I think that is a very important aspect too. Back to you, Ruhail. Those are my thoughts.
Yes. Ms. Burman, what are the challenges that you foresee for a period wherein employees come back to work, resume work in the full scale, full capacity? What would be the 3 big challenges that HR leaders should prepare for?
Sure. So one is, again, like I said, the ability to actually stay productive, right? Because I will tell you one thing, because it's also a thing of how people are viewing the whole situation right now. It's not that people are not productive right now. They're saying, because we have made investments from a technology standpoint for them to be productive at home, right? So what's really the compulsion for them to get back to work? Possibly answering that first question itself in their mind is the first thing that HR leaders need to actually talk about, and necessarily have the mind share of the employees to say what's the benefit, what is it in it for them to actually get back to work. That's the first thing. The second, and that's what people are asking the question, so how do you address it? The second part of it is really be able to say from a work standpoint, right? Because the composition of work per se, in terms of how people are doing it and what's going to happen, Ruhail, it's never going to be the same. It's going to be a rotating population where you'll have a certain percentage of people continue to work from home, because that's the model organizations have shifted to and clients have actually adapted to. The question then becomes is, how do you necessarily ensure continuity of services and experience from an employee and from a client standpoint, and being able to train the people, which is our employees, to be able to bring that mind share is what HR leaders will have to constantly work towards. The third thing, really about manager sensitization. How do you necessarily work as a collaborative team? How do you necessarily deliver services? And again, keep the branding part of it, which is both an internal as well as an external part of it, would be 3 important aspects that HR leaders will have to look into. And I was looking at some of the questions from an impact standpoint on costs, right? Actually, the investment on OPEX has changed. In order to make sure that you're able to keep it going, you're actually making shifts in policies. And I'll give you a very small example, right? If you look at the broadband policies that we had, and I'm sure it is true for many of us, we had to make shifts where we actually make it far more inclusive. So that actually added more costs, because you are necessarily accounting for employee productivity in that sense and continuity of services. Again, we talked about, for example, energy conservation. So if you're not necessarily going to use the energy in the office space, are you necessarily saving enough that you are able to offset? So I think the HR leaders will constantly have to dabble with some of those offsets and gains that you will have as a result of this. And it's going to take possibly 6 or 8 months for us to be able to get it to a stable state.
Right. Mr. Pawar, there's a new dynamic, between HR and employees now, which is virtual right now largely. And once they come face to face, are we all prepared? Is the employee also prepared to deal with the new mindset with the HR? Is the HR prepared for a new mindset from the employee side as far as work adjustments come? Is that a conversation? Do you see this as a conversation as we move on?
So I think great question, Ruhail, and I think the way I look at this is it's a shifting reality, not something that everybody had fathomed and figured out. And I think everybody was talking about the future of work, and we've been deliberating as a profession for the last, I think, potentially about 5 to 7 years. and what the last 6 months have done has thrown us straight into in the experience of creating the future of work real time, right? So I think
and in the deep side of it, yes,
and the deep side of it at the same time. And I think there are three realities we cannot run away from, and it's not happening because it's a nice thing to do. I think future of work was being deliberated to an extent, as I said, but I think there are three realities which are evident. One is this is a reset, and this is going to push organizations to become more efficient. And that connects to the point of CapEx and OpEx, right? The second issue is organizations are really questioning the whole premise of what an office means, which means you're going to see organizations shrink their real estate footprint. It will not be drastic, but I won't be surprised that you will see 20-25% of real estate shrink happen. And the third element of this is really going to be you're going to have to question the need for large workforces and the value each individual is adding to your revenue pipeline, right? So saying you're going to question every headcount that you have today to say, is it really helping me make more revenue? And it's not just about revenue, it's about quality of revenue that's going to become important. So all of these three things together are forcing organizations and HR to look at things very differently. And I don't think it's one versus the other. So you said, our employees understanding what HR is trying to do. I think we are all trying to be in it together. And I think what are organizations doing? I think organizations that had a strong trust capital are benefiting from it right now. But organizations that have scarred employees in the past are genuinely struggling because your employees don't trust you. They don't trust the decisions being taken. And therefore, the chances are that you are not getting the kind of productivity or the kind of are people striving a little bit more during these times? I mean, I said that in the opening that all of us are running a little bit more harder to even stay at the same place, right? And these are times when people need to step up for the organization, shoulder to shoulder, and do a little bit more. Today, you're seeing productivity gains, and I'm not sure productivity gains are happening because people are more productive. Potentially, they're putting in more hours, and therefore, you're seeing higher productivity increases. These are times when communication, and like I think Suchismita said and some others said, communication needs to be at the forefront. We need to equip our line managers, our supervisors to be able to have meaningful conversations with people such that they're genuinely interested and compassionate conversations. Because Ashish said, not everybody has the infrastructure right now to be able to work as comfortably from home. And therefore, even if you're going to shrink real estate space, the chances are not everybody can avail of it as effectively as possible. So having that compassion, having that sensitivity to say, do you have enough listening measures in the organization to say who would want to use it and not want to use it? For example, we ran a survey right now where we went to all our employees because we know that our people today are sitting in remote sites in their hometowns and working from there, supporting our clients, flying in, flying out, because they realize these are times when you need to be around your family and you need to be the one who's caring for your elders. Single people who are single have moved back to their families and parents. So we asked everybody, saying, if you were to be given a choice of moving from the big city to a KPMG office that is close to you, how many of you would choose that option, right? And we are right now in the process of making some of those aspirations real, right? Where people are being allowed to do that. We are actively working to say, are there jobs that we can allow people to, from a long-term perspective, work from home if they choose to work from home? So I think one is this listening needs to be highlighted. I think clearly we need to be listening to what people want and be able to customize that. And conversations need to be of a very different order. Honestly, if you are a transparent, upfront organization and you were to share transparently with people, people get it. These are tough times. They need to stack hands together and partner with the leadership. Back to you.
Perfect. Well point. Thanks. Mr. Mohanti, tell me, what are the broad challenges that you think would come up as workplaces open for the HR community?
See, going forward, I think the hybrid structure will be the more convenient way of working, because we can allow a few people to work from home and few to work from office, because we have to identify who can be a part of the office, or who can be part of the office home kind of things, means working from home or working from office. We have to identify these set of people who can come to office and who have to work from office. Secondly, we have to see whether these guys are willing to come to office or not. If you look at Mumbai city particularly, so most of the people are depending upon the local conveyances or the local trains. So is it safe to ask them to come to office through the local transport? No. If my answer is no, then what else? Then the solution is you have to look at the model of hybrid, where you can allow the people who are staying nearby or who has their own vehicle come to office. They can work from, and there are other people who are not eligible or who are not willing to come. They can still stay at home and work. So it's a combination of both the things. The biggest challenge is how you have to take care of the people when they come to office, whether you are equipped enough to take care of their well-being. So that we have to take care of it. And coming to office wearing the mask and using all time the sanitization, everything, it's not so easy. So I've been going to office for almost 4 days in a week. So I can understand what kind of pain we generally take while throughout 8 hours, if you are sitting in the office with the mask in your face, gloves on your hand, and every time you are very careful whether you are connected with some of the people who might be a COVID patient. So these are the things we have to be very careful while asking the people to come to office. So the HR has a big role here. So we have to take care of those things.
Right. Mr. Singh, tell me about your thoughts on this readjusting in a post-COVID or in a time when COVID threat is lesser, and taking care of your employees. Is it going to be challenging? How do you see that? Yes. Can you? I hope you hear. Can you hear me, Mr. Singh? I think your audio is muted, I guess. Yeah.
Vipul, we can't hear you.
Yeah.
You are on mute.
Okay. Maybe you're on mute. Yeah. Okay. I'll come back to you. I think there's some technical glitch. I'll just come back to you. I want to go back to Mr. Kapoor once again. So tell me, are there any myths that we had about the workspace, the employees, that have got busted during these 6 months? Also, the factor of empathy. HRs, used to do a lot of course, engagement, but do you think the engagement now is more deeper? It would be more deeper. What are the my question is, what are the big myths that have been busted because in these 6 months that HR people have learned? What have been the big learning things from these 6 months?
Thanks, Ruhail. I think a very pertinent question, and I would say many. My seniors actually come in and say very often that we tried for a decade to make sure that function leaders understand that working from home actually works, and COVID could do that in a few months. So and we pushed hard for some sort of technologies that could keep us connected 24/7, work seamlessly. COVID could actually ensure that we get it in the initial 2 or 3 months. So I think some of these things definitely are the myths that were busted, and a couple of other feelers. I think we've always felt that appropriate communication, only what the employees need to understand is something that is being shared or should be shared. But I think now the other myth which is being busted is that we need to communicate openly. We should not don't think that admitting the company is going through turbulent times will scare the employees away or scare the best employees away. Instead, forcing employees to second guess about the financial health. It's important that and very pertinent that we communicate openly. We share the pain. If you're making sure something is being asked for them to do, you lead the way. You sort of do it yourself, and that sort of make sure you share the pain. And I think most importantly, there's this famous saying, having fire in the belly. I think this is the best time to have ice in the belly. These times are such that it's nerve-wracking, and the decisions that we make. So the importance of being calm, composed, and not always in a hurry is just another myth that is being busted, because some decisions are to be taken with a lot of patience and consideration. of what everybody is going through. That's
Right.
what I would have to add.
Perfect. So I'll request my panelists, we have 5 minutes, so everybody has like 30 seconds. It becomes like a TV kind of a debate now. Ms. Burman, your quick thoughts, what were some of the new learnings for HR, which earlier, they thought were true and it came across as something else now?
One is about, I think you touched upon it, the definition of employee engagement. And how do you necessarily engage with employees, right? And whether there is a time and tested method, or can you necessarily go with the flow, right? And you don't always need a survey result, and you don't necessarily always have a proven method to be able to make things work. So that's possibly the first thing that I would say that the HR people, all of us are going to learn on the go, experiment.
Absolutely.
Learn
Mr.
again.
Pawar, your 30-second thought.
So I think quick for few for me. One is I think purpose at the center. I think these are times when you really need to connect people to what are we doing and why are we doing what we are doing. So which is purpose is really at the center of everything. Second thing I think that comes to my mind is trust. Never before has trust been as important as it is playing out right now. So that's the second one for me. And the third one for me is empathy. I think empathy is at the center of leadership right now. So those three is what I would leave you, Ruhail, with.
Perfect. Mr. Mohanti, quickly.
Yes. To my mind, I think as Unmesh rightly said, empathy. So we have to be empathized with the people, the employees. Trust, yes, that has brought a lot of trust. Means within the last 6 months, we have been seeing a lot of trust, which has the management has given to or taken from the employees. And the last part is so collaboration and the adaptation. So once you adapt and collaborate, I think we will also cross this COVID or pandemic, whatever.
Perfect. Thanks. I'm so short on time. Mr. Singh, your last thoughts on this?
No, actually, I don't know how much time we have, and I don't know what question was being asked, but I wanted to make one point.
I just have 30 seconds. Yes, you can.
Yeah, but I have one point which I want to make, and I don't know if I'll take 30, but I'll take about a minute. One is that I do not think at any point of time it's going to be real that organizations will an individual would want to work from home. A McKinsey study says that about 47% of ITES industry has reported decline in productivity because people are working from home. And most importantly, we have to be cognizant that, office social networking, and we are social humans, we cannot really perform at our best if we do not have the ability to be socially active. One thing which I think will be a key differentiator for an HR manager or an HR professional as people start getting back to work is to be tolerant and also manage change. I think, everything around empathy, etc., will be great. But if we are not able to manage the change of mindset, I think we will run into trouble.
Perfect. Mr. Singh, you have summed it up very well. And thank you so much. We're short on time, but been a wonderful discussion. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your insights.